A poor single mom slept on a park bench with her baby until a cop found her, and what happened next not only saved them from the cold, but unleashed a battle of lies, love, and survival that no one could have imagined. Will this desperate mother finally find safety or lose everything she's fought for? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The bitter autumn wind whipped through the park, rustling dead leaves across empty pathways. Emily Grace pulled her thin jacket tighter around herself and her sleeping baby Lily, trying to shield them both from the relentless cold. The metal bench beneath them felt like ice, even through her jeans, but it was all they had tonight. Her stomach cramped with hunger, a hollow ache she'd grown used to over the past few days. She'd given the last of their food, half a peanut butter sandwich, to Lily that afternoon. Seeing her baby girl's face light up at the simple meal had been worth every pang of hunger she now felt. "Hush, little baby, don't say a word," Emily sang softly, her voice barely above a whisper. She gently stroked Lily's wispy brown hair, marveling at how peaceful her daughter looked, even in their dire circumstances. "Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird." The words caught in her throat. Tears pricked at her eyes as she remembered singing this same lullaby in their old apartment, back when she still had a roof over their heads. Back before everything fell apart. 3 weeks ago, she'd finally found the courage to leave Mark. The memory of that night still made her tremble his rage when she'd refused to hand over her paycheck, the way he'd cornered her in the kitchen, his hands reaching for her throat. She'd grabbed Lily and run, with nothing but her purse and the clothes on their backs. But leaving Mark had set off a devastating chain of events. Without his income, she couldn't afford their apartment. Missing shifts to hide from him at her friend's place had cost her the waitressing job she'd held for 2 years. Her friend's roommate had complained about them staying there, and Emily couldn't bear to be a burden. Now here they were, homeless in October. "I'm so sorry, baby girl," Emily whispered, kissing Lily's forehead. Her daughter stirred slightly but didn't wake. "I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I could protect you better on my own." The wind picked up again, and Emily curled her body around Lily like a human shield. She'd tucked her daughter into layers, the warmest onesie, a sweater, and the little purple coat her grandmother had sent last Christmas. Emily had wrapped her own scarf around Lily's legs for extra warmth. Her own hands were numb with cold, but she barely noticed. Every ounce of her focus was on keeping Lily warm and comfortable. As long as her baby was safe, she could endure anything. In the distance, a car engine hummed. Emily tensed, remembering the group of rowdy teenagers who'd driven by earlier, shouting and throwing empty cans. But this engine was different, slower, more deliberate. The sound grew closer, then stopped. Emily's heart began to race. She'd chosen this park carefully, hidden away in a quiet neighborhood where she hoped they wouldn't be noticed. The last thing she needed was someone calling the police about a vagrant with a baby. They might take Lily away, and that thought terrified her more than any physical discomfort. "If you're hungry, little blackbird, soft and shy," she began singing again, trying to stay calm. It was a song her own mother used to sing, though Emily could only remember fragments of it now. "Morning sun will bring you." A beam of light cut through the darkness, sweeping across the ground. Emily's breath caught in her throat. The light moved closer, illuminating the frost-covered grass, then the bench, and finally falling on her and Lily. "Ma'am?" a male voice called out, gentle but authoritative. Heavy boots crunched on the frozen ground, approaching slowly. Emily's arms tightened instinctively around Lily. She blinked against the flashlight's glare, making out the dark uniform of a police officer. His face was in shadow, but his measured movements suggested he was trying not to frighten her. "Please," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Please, we're not causing any trouble. We'll leave right away." But where would they go? The question echoed in her mind, bringing fresh tears to her eyes. The officer took another step closer, and now she could see his face in the pre-dawn light. He was middle-aged, with kind eyes that reminded her of her father's. There were worry lines around his mouth, but they seemed born of compassion rather than judgment. "I'm Officer Hayes," he said softly, lowering his flashlight so it wasn't directly in her eyes. "Are you and your little one all right?" Emily drew back slightly, pressing herself against the cold metal of the bench. Her experiences with authority figures, especially male ones, had taught her to be wary. But there was something different about this officer's demeanor, something that made her desperate need for help war with her instinct to run. Lily chose that moment to stir, making a small sound of discomfort. Emily immediately began to rock her, humming softly, praying she wouldn't fully wake. The last thing they needed was for Lily to start crying. Officer Hayes remained where he was, maintaining a respectful distance. He didn't move to call for backup or reach for his handcuffs. Instead, he slowly crouched down, bringing himself to her eye level, making himself less threatening. Emily's throat felt tight with fear and uncertainty. The officer's next words could determine their fate, whether they'd find help or face separation. She looked down at Lily's sleeping face, drawing strength from her daughter's peaceful expression, and waited for whatever judgment was about to fall. Officer Daniel Hayes moved slowly, his boots crunching on the frost-covered grass. Emily's heart pounded as she clutched Lily closer, her muscles tensing with each step he took toward them. The police officer's flashlight beam lowered, no longer blinding her. "Ma'am," he said softly, dropping to one knee a few feet from the bench. His voice was gentle, nothing like the harsh tone she'd expected. "You must be freezing out here." Emily didn't respond. She'd learned the hard way that kind voices could hide cruel intentions. Her fingers trembled as they curled protectively around Lily's tiny body. "I have some blankets in my patrol car," Officer Hayes continued, maintaining his distance. "Would you like one? For the baby, at least?" At the mention of Lily, Emily's resolve wavered. Her daughter had already endured so much cold. The thin blanket from their old apartment barely kept out the autumn chill. Emily's voice cracked. "We're fine," Officer Hayes nodded, his expression remaining calm and patient. "I understand if you don't trust me, but I promise you, I just want to help." He reached slowly into his jacket pocket and pulled out his badge, holding it where she could see it clearly. "I'm Officer Daniel Hayes. What's your name?" Emily swallowed hard, weighing her options. Lily stirred against her chest, making tiny sounds of discomfort from the cold. That decided it for her. "Emily," she whispered. "Emily Grace. It's nice to meet you, Emily." Officer Hayes stood carefully. "May I get those blankets now? I'll walk slowly to my car and back. You can watch me the whole time." She nodded, her eyes following his every move as he walked to his patrol car. The vehicle's trunk opened with a soft click, and he returned, carrying 2 thick wool blankets. "Here," he said, holding them out. When Emily hesitated, he placed them on the bench's empty end, then stepped back again. "Their department. Issued. Nothing fancy, but they're warm." Emily reached for the blankets with one hand, keeping Lily secure with the other. The wool was rough but wonderfully thick. She draped one over Lily first, tucking it around her sleeping form. The second blanket she pulled around her own shoulders, trying to hide how much her hands were shaking. "Thank you," she murmured. "Emily," Officer Hayes said, his voice still gentle but carrying a note of concern, "how long have you and your little one been out here?" Tears pricked at her eyes. She blinked them back furiously. Just tonight. And before that?" The question brought fresh pain. Emily looked down at Lily's peaceful face, drawing strength from her daughter's presence. "We had an apartment, but I lost my job, and then—" She couldn't finish. And then the eviction notice came. Officer Hayes completed quietly. When Emily nodded, he continued, "Do you have any family or friends you can stay with?" "No." The word felt like it was being torn from her throat. My ex, he made sure I didn't have anyone left." Understanding flickered across Officer Hayes's face. He was quiet for a moment, then asked, "When was the last time you ate something?" Emily's stomach clenched at the question. "I had some crackers yesterday morning." "But Lily," she stroked her daughter's cheek, "I still have half a can of formula for her." Officer Hayes stood again, movements deliberately slow. "There's a place I know, a shelter for women and children. They have warm beds, hot meals, and people who can help you get back on your feet." He paused, watching her face. "Would you let me take you there?" Fear and hope warred in Emily's chest. "I can't. I don't have any money." You don't need any. It's a safe place, Emily. I volunteer there myself when I'm off duty." That made her look up sharply, studying his face for any sign of deception. Instead, she saw only sincerity in his warm brown eyes. "Why?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Why would you help me?" "Because everyone deserves a chance," he replied simply. "And no one should have to sleep in the cold, especially not with a baby." Lily chose that moment to wake, making small fussy noises. Emily bounced her gently, but the baby's cries grew louder, echoing in the empty park. "She's probably hungry," Emily said, anxiety creeping into her voice. "I need to warm her formula, but—" "The shelter has a kitchen," Officer Hayes said. "They'll have everything you need." He gestured toward his patrol car. "It's your choice, Emily, but you're both welcome to come with me right now." Emily looked at her daughter's face, red from crying and cold. She thought of another night on this hard bench, of the dwindling formula, of the winter that was coming. Then she looked at Officer Hayes, who waited patiently, keeping his distance, respecting her space. "Okay," she whispered, standing shakily. "Okay." Officer Hayes smiled warmly, then led the way to his patrol car. He opened the back door, helping Emily settle in with Lily still cradled in her arms. The car's heater was running, and warm air washed over them. As they drove through the quiet streets, Emily watched the city lights blur past the window. Lily had settled down, soothed by the car's movement and warmth. Fresh tears filled Emily's eyes, but these weren't entirely from fear or shame. "Why would you help me?" she whispered again, more to herself than to Officer Hayes. In the rearview mirror, she caught his gentle smile as he drove them towards something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. The women's shelter stood quietly on a tree-lined street, its brick walls worn but welcoming in the early morning light. Emily stepped through the front door. Lily nestled against her chest, and the warmth inside made her realize just how cold she'd been. The entryway smelled like coffee and cinnamon, so different from the harsh winter air outside. A short, plump woman with silver-streaked black hair hurried toward them, her face creasing into warm smile lines. "Officer Hayes," she said, nodding to Daniel before turning her full attention to Emily. "I'm Mrs. Rodriguez, dear. Welcome to Haven House." Emily shifted uncomfortably, very aware of her unwashed hair and rumpled clothes. "I'm Emily," she whispered. "And this is Lily." Mrs. Rodriguez's eyes softened as she looked at the sleeping baby. What a precious little angel. She gestured toward a cozy sitting area. "Come, sit down. You look like you could use some breakfast." Emily glanced back at Officer Hayes, who gave her an encouraging nod. "Go on, you're safe here." As Emily followed Mrs. Rodriguez, she noticed other women watching from doorways and the small kitchen area. Some held coffee cups, others had children clinging to their legs. Their eyes held a knowing look that made Emily's cheeks burn with shame. "Don't mind them, honey," Mrs. Rodriguez said quietly, leading Emily to a worn but clean sofa. "Everyone here has their own story. No judgment in these walls." A young woman with red hair approached, carrying a tray with oatmeal, toast, and a steaming mug of tea. "Here," she said, setting it on the coffee table. "The oatmeal has brown sugar and cinnamon. It's good, I promise." Emily's hands trembled as she accepted the tea. "Thank you," she managed. Her stomach growled loudly at the sight of food, and Mrs. Rodriguez smiled knowingly. "Eat first," she said. "Then we'll get you and little Lily settled." She turned to Officer Hayes, who still stood near the door. "Thank you, Daniel. I'll take good care of them." He touched the brim of his cap. "I know you will, Rosa. I'll check in later." With a final gentle look at Emily and Lily, he left. The oatmeal was indeed good, warm and sweet. Emily ate slowly, careful not to upset her empty stomach. Lily began to stir, making small fussy noises that Emily recognized as hunger signs. Before she could panic about feeding her baby, Mrs. Rodriguez appeared with a warm bottle. "We keep formula on hand," she explained, settling beside Emily. "And we'll get you both some clean clothes and toiletries after you've eaten." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "I can't pay for any of this." Mrs. Rodriguez patted her knee. "That's not how we work here, dear. Everything is provided through donations and grants." She watched as Emily fed Lily, who eagerly accepted the bottle. "How old is she?" "6 months," Emily said, her voice thick with emotion. She's all I have." "And you're all she needs," Mrs. Rodriguez said firmly. "A mother's love is stronger than any circumstance." After breakfast, Mrs. Rodriguez showed them to a small but clean room with 2 beds and a crib. "This will be your space," she explained. "Bathrooms down the hall, and we have a laundry room in the basement. House rules are posted on the door, mainly about keeping common areas tidy and respecting quiet hours." Emily stood in the middle of the room, overwhelmed by the simple luxury of having a safe place to sleep. Mrs. Rodriguez brought her a stack of clean towels, baby supplies, and fresh clothes for both her and Lily. "Get cleaned up," she encouraged. "Rest. When you're ready, come find me in my office. We'll talk about your next steps." In the bathroom, Emily caught her reflection in the mirror and barely recognized herself. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her blonde hair hung in limp strands. The hot shower felt like heaven, washing away days of worry and fear. The clean clothes, simple sweats and a t-shirt, made her feel human again. Back in her room, Emily changed Lily into a soft yellow onesie from the donated supplies. The baby cooed happily, reaching up to pat Emily's face with chubby hands. "We're okay, sweet girl," Emily whispered, kissing Lily's fingers. "We're okay now." The crib was sturdy and clean, with a colorful mobile hanging above it. Emily laid Lily down carefully, watching as her daughter's eyes grew heavy. The gentle motion of the mobile and the warmth of the room soon lulled Lily to sleep. Standing by the crib, Emily heard voices drifting in from the hallway. 2 women were talking in low tones, but their words carried clearly. "That's the 3rd single mom Officer Hayes has brought in this month," one said. "He always goes above and beyond," the other replied. "Ever since his wife died, he's been like a guardian angel for cases like these. Remember Maria and her kids last summer? He helped her find a job and everything." Emily's throat tightened as she absorbed this information. Why would a police officer care so much about helping strangers? She thought of how he'd knelt beside her bench in the park, how he'd spoken so gently to Lily. It didn't fit with everything she knew about authority figures, about men in uniform who usually treated people like her as problems to be solved. The voices moved away, leaving Emily with her thoughts. She watched Lily sleeping peacefully, tiny fingers curled around the edge of her blanket. For the first time in days, Emily allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, things could get better. The morning sunlight streamed through the shelter's cafeteria windows, casting warm patches across the worn linoleum floor. Emily sat at one of the long tables, spooning tiny bites of oatmeal into Lily's eager mouth. Her own breakfast sat untouched, growing cold. "Is that good, sweet girl?" Emily whispered, wiping Lily's chin with a paper napkin. The familiar routine of feeding her daughter helped calm her racing thoughts about their uncertain future. The cafeteria door opened, and Officer Daniel Hayes walked in carrying a cardboard box. Several children playing in the corner immediately perked up, their faces brightening at the sight of him. Emily noticed he wasn't in uniform today, instead wearing jeans and a soft blue sweater that made him look more approachable. "Officer Hayes!" a little girl with pigtails called out, running up to him. "Did you bring us something?" Daniel set the box down on an empty table, grinning. "Well, let's see what we have here." He made a show of peeking inside, building suspense as more children gathered around him. Could these be coloring books? The children squealed with delight as he pulled out a stack of fresh coloring books and boxes of crayons. Emily watched, surprised by how naturally he interacted with them, his deep voice gentle as he handed out the supplies. "Now remember," he said, kneeling to their level, "sharing is caring. Make sure everyone gets a turn, okay?" "Yes, Officer Hayes," they chorused, already spreading out on the floor with their treasures. Daniel stood up, brushing off his knees, and walked over to Emily's table. "Good morning," he said, pulling out a chair. "How was your first night?" Emily shifted Lily in her arms, suddenly self-conscious of her wrinkled clothes and unwashed hair. "It was better than a park bench," she admitted quietly. "I bet." His eyes crinkled with understanding. "And how's this little one doing?" He wiggled his fingers at Lily, who who had been watching him intently. To Emily's amazement, Lily broke into a wide, gummy smile and reached toward Daniel with her tiny hands. "Da, da," she cooed, bouncing in Emily's lap. Emily's chest tightened. Lily rarely smiled at strangers. Usually she buried her face in Emily's shoulder when anyone approached. But here she was, beaming at Officer Hayes like he was an old friend. "Well, hello there, Miss Lily," Daniel said softly, letting her grab his finger. "You're quite the charmer this morning." Emily watched their interaction, a strange mixture of emotions swirling in her stomach. She doesn't usually do that," she explained. "With strangers, I mean." Daniel's eyes met hers. "Kids have good instincts," he said simply. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small stuffed rabbit. "I thought she might like this. My son Tommy used to carry one just like it everywhere he went." Emily hesitated before accepting the toy. "You have a son?" "Yeah, he's 15 now." A shadow of something. Grief, maybe? Crossed Daniel's face before he smiled again. Time flies. Lily immediately grabbed the rabbit, stuffing one ear into her mouth. Emily found herself relaxing slightly, touched by the thoughtful gesture. "Thank you. You didn't have to." "I wanted to," Daniel interrupted gently. He glanced at her untouched bowl of oatmeal. "You should eat something too, you know. The shelter's food isn't 5-star cuisine, but it'll keep you going." Emily picked up her spoon, more to appease him than from actual hunger. Do you come here often? To the shelter, I mean?" Daniel leaned back in his chair, watching the children color. "A few times a week, when I'm not on duty. Started volunteering here about 3 years ago." He paused, then added quietly, "After my wife passed away?" "Oh." Emily didn't know what to say. "I'm sorry." He shrugged, but she could see the pain in his eyes. "Life throws us curves sometimes. What matters is how we handle them." He looked at her meaningfully. "You're handling yours with more courage than you probably realize." Emily dropped her gaze, focusing on Lily, who was now contentedly chewing the rabbit's ear. "I don't feel very courageous," she whispered. "That's often when we're strongest, when we don't feel it at all." Daniel stood up, checking his watch. "I've got to head out, but Mrs. Rodriguez wants to meet with you later about some job training programs. Give them a chance, okay?" Emily nodded, surprised by the hint of tears in her eyes. Why was this stranger's kindness affecting her so much? "And Emily?" Daniel paused at her table. "You're not alone anymore. Remember that." She watched him say goodbye to the children, high-fiving each one and praising their colorful artwork. As he left, Lily waved her rabbit at his retreating back, babbling happily. After finishing breakfast, Emily gathered Lily and the new stuffed rabbit, heading back to their room. The shelter's hallways were quiet at this hour, most residents either at work or in counseling sessions. She passed the community bulletin board, scanning the various notices about support groups and job listings. Then her eyes landed on a legal notice, freshly pinned among the flyers. Her heart stopped as she read the familiar name, Jason Mitchell versus Emily Grace, custody hearing notice. The words blurred as panic clawed at her throat. Her ex was filing for custody of Lily, the same man who had thrown her down a flight of stairs when she was 4 months pregnant. The man who had controlled every aspect of her life for 2 years, who had isolated her from family and friends, who had destroyed her self-worth piece by piece. Emily's knees gave out, and she sank to the floor, clutching Lily close. The baby squirmed, dropping her new rabbit, concerned by her mother's distress. "No, no, no," Emily whispered, her whole body shaking. He can't take you. I won't let him." But the notice hung there, cold and official, threatening to tear apart the fragile sense of safety she'd just begun to feel. The hallway seemed to spin around her as memories of Jason's violence flooded back, the screaming, the threats, the promises that she'd never escape him. Lily patted Emily's wet cheeks, making worried sounds. Emily forced herself to take deep breaths, trying to calm down for her daughter's sake. She picked up the fallen rabbit, pressing it into Lily's hands. "It's okay, baby," she murmured, though her voice trembled. "Mama's okay. Everything's going to be okay." But as she stared at the custody notice, Emily had never felt less okay in her life. Emily collapsed onto her narrow shelter bed, her body shaking with sobs. The custody notice she'd found on the bulletin board felt like a death sentence. Her trembling fingers clutched the wrinkled paper, its threatening words blurring through her tears. Lily slept peacefully in the donated crib nearby, unaware of the storm raging in her mother's heart. "I can't lose her," Emily whispered into her pillow, trying to muffle her cries. "She's all I have." The thought of her ex-partner gaining custody made her stomach churn. He'd never shown interest in Lily before. This was just another way to control her, to punish her for leaving. A soft knock at the door made Emily hastily wipe her eyes. "Come in," she managed, her voice scratchy. Mrs. Rodriguez entered, her kind face etched with concern. She carried 2 steaming cups of tea, the familiar scent of chamomile filling the small room. "Mihija," she said softly, sitting beside Emily on the bed. "I heard about the notice." Emily accepted the warm cup with shaking hands. "He's going to take her from me," she whispered, fresh tears spilling. "The court will see. I'm homeless, jobless. They'll think I'm unfit." Mrs. Rodriguez placed a steady hand on Emily's shoulder. "No, cariño. Being poor doesn't make you unfit. Look at how well you care for Lily. Even on that cold bench, you kept her warm and safe. That's what a good mother does." "But I have nothing to offer her," Emily protested, glancing at her sleeping daughter. "No home, no money, no—" "Stop right there," Mrs. Rodriguez interrupted firmly. "You have something more valuable than money. Love. And you have us now. We'll help you fight this." Emily stared into her tea, unconvinced. "How can I fight him? He has money for lawyers. He'll tell them about my past, about your strength?" Mrs. Rodriguez finished. "About how you chose your daughter's safety over comfort? About how you've never stopped trying, even when everything was against you?" A fresh wave of tears spilled down Emily's cheeks, but these felt different, cleansing rather than devastating. Mrs. Rodriguez pulled her into a motherly embrace, and Emily found herself clinging to the older woman like a lifeline. "Listen to me," Mrs. Rodriguez continued, her voice gentle but firm. "Many women have sat where you're sitting, feeling just as hopeless. But the law protects mothers, too. We have resources, free legal aid, counselors, support groups. You're not alone anymore." Lily stirred in her crib, making soft, cooing sounds. The familiar noise steadied Emily's breathing, anchoring her to the present moment. Another knock at the door made both women look up. Officer Daniel Hayes stood in the doorway, his expression concerned. He'd changed into civilian clothes, jeans and a worn blue sweater that somehow made him look more approachable than his uniform. "May I come in?" he asked quietly. Mrs. Rodriguez patted Emily's hand and stood. "I'll let you two talk. Remember what I said, Emily. You're stronger than you know." She slipped past Daniel with a meaningful look. Daniel took the chair near Emily's bed, his usually confident demeanor softened with concern. "I heard about the custody filing," he said directly but gently. "I want to help." Emily shook her head, unable to meet his eyes. "You've already done too much. I can't ask for more." "You're not asking, I'm offering." He leaned forward, his voice earnest. "Emily, I've seen too many good people give up because they think the system's stacked against them. Don't let that be you." "Why do you care?" The question burst from her before she could stop it. "You don't even know me." Daniel was quiet for a moment, his hands clasped together. "Because everyone deserves someone in their corner," he finally said. "And because I've seen how you are with Lily, that little girl couldn't ask for a more devoted mother." As if on cue, Lily began to fuss. Emily automatically rose to get her, but Daniel was closer. He lifted the baby with practiced ease, speaking softly to her before passing her to Emily. The familiar weight of her daughter in her arms centered Emily, as it always did. "I can connect you with a good family court lawyer," Daniel continued. "Someone who's helped other women from the shelter. They work pro bono for cases like yours." Emily looked down at Lily, who was contentedly playing with her mother's hair. "What if it's not enough?" she whispered. "What if he convinces them?" "Then we'll fight harder," Daniel interrupted firmly. "But you have to be willing to stand up for yourself, Emily. For Lily." Lily reached up, patting Emily's wet cheeks with her tiny hands. The simple gesture of comfort from her baby girl broke something open in Emily's heart. She thought of all the nights she'd protected this precious life, all the sacrifices she'd made to keep her safe. Could she really give up now? "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "Good," Daniel said, surprising her. "It means you understand what's at stake, but being scared doesn't mean you can't be brave too." He stood slowly, his presence steady and reassuring. "Think about it. Whatever you decide, we're here to support you." "But Emily?" He waited until she looked up at him. "Don't let fear make this decision for you." As Daniel's footsteps faded down the hallway, Emily held Lily closer, breathing in her sweet baby scent. Her daughter's warmth against her chest felt like strength flowing into her tired body. She thought of Mrs. Rodriguez's words about resources and support, of Daniel's offer to help, of all the other women in the shelter who'd faced similar battles. "I'll fight for you, no matter what," she whispered against Lily's soft hair. The sound of Daniel's retreating steps seemed to echo her promise, and for the first time since seeing that notice, Emily felt something solid and determined take root in her heart. The morning sun cast long shadows across the parking lot as Daniel's patrol car pulled up to Pete's Corner Diner. Emily's hands fidgeted in her lap, her heart racing. Lily babbled happily from her car seat, oblivious to her mother's nerves. "Pete's a good man," Daniel said, turning off the engine. "He gave my son his first job when things were rough after Sarah." He paused, clearing his throat. "After my wife passed." Emily glanced at him, noting the flash of pain that crossed his face. She wanted to say something comforting but couldn't find the words. Instead, she focused on smoothing down her borrowed blouse from the shelter's donation closet. "What if I mess this up?" she whispered, more to herself than to Daniel. "You won't," Daniel said firmly. "Mrs. Rodriguez already arranged for Lily to stay in the shelter's daycare during your shifts. Just be honest with Pete about your situation." The diner was a modest building with worn red vinyl booths visible through large windows. The morning regulars hunched over steaming coffee cups, while waitresses bustled between tables with practiced efficiency. Daniel helped Emily get Lily out of the car seat, and the baby immediately reached for his badge, making him smile. Emily noticed how natural he was with children, probably from raising his own son. A bell chimed as they entered the diner. The aroma of coffee and bacon wrapped around them like a warm blanket. Behind the counter, a stocky man with salt and pepper hair looked up from wiping glasses. "Danny!" he called out, his weathered face breaking into a genuine smile. "This must be Emily and little Lily." Emily shifted Lily to her other hip, surprised by the friendly welcome. "Yes, sir. Thank you for considering me." "Pete," he corrected kindly, coming around the counter. "We don't stand on ceremony here." He gestured toward a quiet booth in the corner. "Let's talk." Daniel touched Emily's shoulder lightly. "I'll wait here with Lily." Emily carefully handed Lily over, and the baby immediately grabbed for Daniel's nose, making him chuckle. The sound gave Emily courage as she followed Pete to the booth. "Mrs. Rodriguez tells me you're staying at the shelter," Pete said once they were seated. His voice held no judgment, just matter-of-fact warmth. Emily nodded, her fingers twisting in her lap. "Yes, but I'm working to get back on my feet. I need to prove I can provide for my daughter." "Everyone needs a chance sometimes," Pete said. "The dishwashing position is part-time, 4 hours each morning. It's not glamorous, but it's honest work." "I'll work hard," Emily promised, her voice stronger now. "I used to be in nursing school before." She trailed off, not wanting to mention her ex. Pete's eyes softened with understanding. "Let's start you tomorrow, 6 a.m. sharp. The morning crew will show you the ropes." Emily blinked back tears of relief. Thank you so much." When they returned to the counter, they found Daniel making silly faces at Lily, who was giggling uncontrollably. Several customers were smiling at the scene, and Emily felt a warmth spread through her chest at the sight. "Welcome to the team," Pete said, extending his hand. Emily shook it, noticing his firm, honest grip. The drive back to the shelter was quiet, but it was a comfortable silence. Lily dozed in her car seat, and Emily watched the familiar streets pass by, feeling something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. "I know it's not much," Daniel said as they pulled into the shelter parking lot. "But it's a start." "It's everything," Emily replied softly. "I can't thank you enough." "You don't have to thank me. Just keep moving forward." The next morning came too quickly. Emily's alarm went off at 4:30 a.m., and she dressed quietly in the dark, trying not to wake Lily. Mrs. Rodriguez had arranged for early morning daycare, and Emily's heart ached leaving her baby, even knowing she was safe. The morning air was crisp as she walked the 6 blocks to the diner. Her borrowed shoes pinched her toes, but she barely noticed. Her mind was focused on one thing: proving she could do this. Pete was waiting when she arrived, and he showed her to the kitchen. The industrial dishwasher loomed before her, steam rising from its metal surface. The morning prep cook, Maria, showed her how to operate it, how to stack the dishes efficiently, and where everything belonged. The work was harder than Emily expected. Her hands grew red and wrinkled from the hot water, her back ached from standing, and the noise of the kitchen was overwhelming at first. But there was something satisfying about seeing the clean dishes stack up, about being part of the morning routine. The other kitchen staff were kind, if busy. Maria shared her coffee during their brief break, and the line cook, Joe, saved her a warm biscuit. Even the waitresses smiled as they dropped off their loaded dish bins. When her shift ended at 10 a.m., Emily's whole body was tired, but her spirit felt lighter. Pete handed her an envelope with her first day's pay, actual money she had earned herself. "You did good today," he said simply. "See you tomorrow?" "Yes, sir." "I mean, Pete. Thank you." The walk back to the shelter seemed shorter somehow. Emily's feet hurt. Her hands were tender, but she couldn't stop smiling. When she picked up Lily from daycare, her daughter's face lit up with recognition, tiny arms reaching for her. Back in their small room, Emily changed Lily's diaper and got her ready for her morning nap. As she laid her daughter in the crib, she noticed the envelope in her pocket. She pulled it out, counting the money twice. It wasn't much, but it was more than she'd had yesterday. "We might just make it," she whispered to Lily, who was already drifting off to sleep. Outside in the parking lot, Daniel sat in his patrol car, head bowed in prayer. "Lord," he whispered, "give her strength, help her find her way." But Emily didn't see him there, watching over them like a guardian angel in a police uniform. The kitchen of Pete's Corner Diner hummed with activity as Emily scrubbed another stack of greasy plates. Steam rose from the industrial dishwasher, making her cotton uniform stick to her skin. Her hands were red and pruned from hours in the hot water, but she didn't mind. Each dish meant another dollar toward her future with Lily. "Hey, Emily, you're doing great back here," Pete called from the grill. His kind eyes crinkled at the corners as he flipped burgers with practiced ease. "Take your break soon, okay?" Emily nodded gratefully. The shelter had arranged childcare for Lily during her shifts, but her heart always ached to get back to her baby. Still, the work felt good, honest, and straightforward. No one judged her here. They just cared if the dishes were clean. After her shift, Emily would hurry back to the shelter, scoop up a giggling Lily, and head to the small library where Daniel waited with GED study materials spread across a worn wooden table. These evening study sessions had become a lifeline, a glimpse of the future she'd once dreamed of before everything fell apart. "The quadratic formula is your friend," Daniel explained one evening, his finger tracing the equation in her math workbook. "Just plug in the numbers and follow the steps." Emily stared at the jumble of letters and symbols, her tired mind struggling to focus. Lily played contentedly on a blanket nearby, surrounded by soft blocks and her favorite stuffed giraffe. "I used to be good at math," Emily sighed, rubbing her temples. "Before," Daniel's pen stopped moving. He knew what she meant. Before the abuse, before her confidence was shattered. "You still are good at it?" he said firmly. "The knowledge is there. We just need to help you find it again." His quiet faith in her abilities brought unexpected tears to her eyes. Emily blinked them back quickly, determined to stay focused on the problem at hand. She couldn't afford to get emotional about Daniel's kindness, even though it touched her deeply. The study sessions fell into a comfortable routine. Daniel would bring coffee and sometimes cookies from the diner where she worked. Emily would share funny stories about Lily's daily discoveries. Between algebra and essay practice, they talked about everything and nothing: favorite books, childhood memories, hopes for the future. My son Jake was a handful at Lily's age, Daniel recalled one evening, watching the baby stack blocks with intense concentration. Couldn't keep him still for a minute. Emily smiled, picturing a miniature version of the serious police officer crawling into mischief. Lily's pretty mellow most of the time. Unless she's hungry, then watch out. As if on cue, Lily's tower of blocks crashed down. Instead of crying, she clapped her hands and laughed, making both adults chuckle. The baby's joy was infectious. She's got your resilience, Daniel observed softly. Nothing keeps her down for long. Emily felt warmth spread through her chest at the compliment. These moments of easy conversation helped ease the constant anxiety about the custody battle looming ahead. In Daniel's presence, she could almost believe everything would work out. The weeks passed in a blur of dirty dishes, practice tests, and precious moments with Lily. Emily's hands grew calloused from work, but her mind felt sharper, stronger. The GED material started making more sense as Daniel patiently explained concepts she'd forgotten. "You're making incredible progress," he told her one evening, reviewing her practice essay. "Your writing is clear and powerful. The test evaluators will be impressed." Emily flushed with pride. "I couldn't have done it without your help," she admitted. "I don't know how to thank you for all this." Daniel waved away her gratitude. "Seeing you succeed is thanks enough. Besides, I enjoy our study sessions. They're the highlight of my week." The simple honesty in his voice made Emily's heart skip. Before she could respond, Lily pulled herself up using the table edge, bouncing excitedly. "Da, da," she babbled clearly, reaching toward Daniel with chubby hands. "Da, da." The room went absolutely still. Emily's breath caught in her throat as she watched Daniel's expression shift from surprise to something softer, more vulnerable. His eyes glistened as he looked at Lily, then quickly glanced away. Emily forced a light laugh, though her pulse was racing. "She's been trying out all sorts of sounds lately," she said quickly, scooping Lily up. Yesterday she was saying, "ba-ba," to her blocks, but they both knew this was different. Lily had never directed such a clear word at anyone before. The moment hung between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. Daniel cleared his throat and shuffled his papers, clearly trying to maintain professional distance. "Should we get back to polynomials?" he asked, his voice slightly rough. "Yes, please," Emily replied gratefully, settling Lily back on her blanket with fresh toys. Her cheeks felt hot as she bent over her workbook, pretending to study the problems while her mind whirled. She couldn't let herself read too much into Lily's innocent babbling. Couldn't let herself imagine the three of them as a real family, no matter how natural it felt in moments like these. There was too much at stake, too many ways it could all fall apart. But as Daniel launched into an explanation of mathematical terms, his steady voice washing over her, Emily couldn't quite suppress the warm glow in her chest. For now, she would focus on the next step forward: dishes, studying, loving Lily. The rest would have to wait. The autumn sun was setting as Daniel's patrol car pulled into a quiet suburban neighborhood. Emily sat in the passenger seat, holding Lily securely in her lap. Her stomach twisted with nerves as they approached a modest 2-story house with warm yellow lights glowing in the windows. "Home sweet home," Daniel said, parking in the driveway. He turned to Emily with an encouraging smile. "Don't worry too much about Jacob. He takes a little time to warm up to new people." Emily nodded, trying to calm her racing heart. She hadn't been inside a real home in so long. The shelter, while safe, wasn't the same as a lived-in family house with photos on the walls and familiar creaks in the floorboards. Daniel led them up the front path, fall leaves crunching under their feet. Lily babbled excitedly at the colorful trees, reaching out with tiny fingers to grab at nothing. The porch light flickered on automatically, and Emily caught the scent of something cooking, maybe pasta sauce, wafting through the screen door. "Dad?" a teenage voice called from inside. "That you?" "Yeah, Jake. Come meet our dinner guests." Jacob appeared in the doorway, tall and lanky like his father, but with darker features. His expression was guarded as he looked Emily up and down, lingering on Lily with confusion. "Hi," he said flatly, stepping back to let them in. Emily clutched Lily closer, feeling like an intruder. but Daniel's steady presence beside her gave her courage to step over the threshold. The house was warm and lived in, with mismatched furniture that spoke of comfort rather than style. A basketball jersey hung on a coat hook, and textbooks were scattered across the coffee table. It felt real, in a way that made Emily's chest ache. "I hope you like spaghetti," Daniel said, heading toward the kitchen. "It's about all I can make without burning the house down." "It smells wonderful," Emily said softly. And it did. The rich aroma of tomatoes and herbs filled the air. Jacob hovered nearby, hands stuffed in his pockets. But then Lily let out a sudden giggle, reaching toward him with grabby hands and a gummy smile. "Bah!" she exclaimed, her whole face lighting up. Something in Jacob's expression shifted. The corner of his mouth twitched upward. "She's pretty cute," he admitted, letting Lily catch one of his fingers in her tiny fist. "Would you like to hold her while I help your dad?" Emily offered carefully. "She seems to like you." Jacob hesitated, then nodded. Emily showed him how to support Lily's head and back, and soon the baby was settled contentedly in his arms, playing with the strings of his hoodie. In the kitchen, Daniel was stirring a pot of sauce while pasta boiled on another burner. Emily found herself falling into an easy rhythm with him, getting plates from the cabinet he pointed to, finding forks in the drawer, helping to grate fresh Parmesan cheese. "Jake's good with her," Daniel observed quietly, glancing toward the living room where his son was now making silly faces at Lily. "She's a good judge of character," Emily replied, surprising herself with the warmth in her voice. When they sat down to eat, Emily's first bite of the spaghetti nearly brought tears to her eyes. After months of shelter meals and quick bites between dishwashing shifts, the simple, home-cooked food tasted like heaven. "This is amazing," she said sincerely. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck, looking pleased. "My wife taught me the sauce recipe, said every dad should know how to make at least one proper meal." A brief shadow crossed Jacob's face at the mention of his mother, but it passed quickly as Lily chose that moment to slam her hands into her small portion of pasta, sending sauce flying. "Nice shot, kid," Jacob laughed, wiping red spots off his shirt. The tension broke, and the rest of dinner passed with easy conversation. Jacob talked about his basketball team's upcoming game, and Daniel shared funny stories from his patrol rounds. Emily found herself relaxing, bouncing Lily on her knee, and actually laughing at their jokes. After the meal, Emily insisted on helping with cleanup. She and Daniel fell into a comfortable rhythm, him washing, her drying, while Jacob entertained Lily in the living room. The kitchen was quiet except for the sound of running water and clinking dishes. Emily watched soap bubbles slide down a plate, feeling a deep sense of peace she hadn't experienced in longer than she could remember. The yellow light above the sink cast everything in a gentle glow, and the wooden floor was warm under her feet. Without thinking, she whispered so softly it was barely audible, "This feels like family." She didn't notice Daniel pause for just a moment in his washing, didn't see the gentle smile that crossed his face as he handed her another dish to dry. Emily's hands trembled as she smoothed down her borrowed navy blue skirt suit. The courthouse hallway felt impossibly long, its marble floors echoing with each step. Daniel walked beside her, carrying Lily, who was dressed in her cleanest white onesie with tiny pink flowers. "Remember to breathe," Daniel whispered, adjusting Lily in his arms. "Just tell the truth. That's all you need to do." Emily nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Mrs. Rodriguez from the shelter had come too, sitting quietly on a nearby bench with a folder full of Emily's progress reports. The shelter director's presence felt like a warm blanket of support. The courtroom doors opened, and Emily's heart nearly stopped when she saw her ex, Marcus, sitting at the plaintiff's table in an expensive suit. His lawyer, a sharp-faced woman in designer clothes, shuffled papers with practiced efficiency. Emily hadn't seen Marcus since that terrible night she'd fled with Lily, and his presence made her want to run again. "All rise," the bailiff called out, the Honorable Judge Harriet Lawson presiding. Judge Lawson swept into the courtroom, her black robes rustling as she took her seat. Her steel-gray hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and her eyes were keen as she surveyed the room. "Be seated," she commanded. "We're here today regarding the custody petition for Lily Grace, minor child." Marcus's lawyer stood first, her heels clicking on the floor. "Your Honor, we're seeking full custody for my client, Marcus Wheeler. Miss Grace has demonstrated a pattern of instability and homelessness that puts the child at risk." Emily felt her chest tighten. The lawyer's words painted a picture that felt both true and terribly unfair. "Miss Grace abandoned her residence without notice," the lawyer continued, "and was found sleeping on a park bench with an infant. This shows a dangerous lack of judgment." Judge Lawson's eyes narrowed. "And where was your client during this period?" "My client was working to provide a stable home, Your Honor. He's prepared to give the child the security she needs." Emily's court-appointed lawyer, a kind-faced man named Mr. Peters, rose next. "Your Honor, if I may present context for Miss Grace's situation?" The judge nodded, and Mr. Peters gestured for Emily to take the stand. Daniel squeezed her hand quickly before she walked up. After being sworn in, Emily sat in the witness chair, her legs feeling like jelly. "Miss Grace," Mr. Peters began gently, "please tell the court why you left your previous residence." Emily took a shaky breath. Her voice came out barely above a whisper at first. "I left because—" She paused, gathering courage. "Because Marcus had thrown a chair through the wall next to where Lily's crib was. He was angry that she was crying." A murmur went through the courtroom. Marcus's face darkened. "And this wasn't the first incident?" Mr. Peters prompted. "No." Emily's voice grew stronger. "He would get angry when Lily cried at night. He'd punch walls, break things," he said. She swallowed hard. "He said he'd teach her to be quiet, one way or another. I couldn't let that happen to my baby." Judge Lawson leaned forward. "Did you report these incidents?" "I was afraid," Emily admitted. "He said if I ever told anyone, he'd make sure I never saw Lily again." Marcus's lawyer stood to object, but Judge Lawson waved her down. "Continue, Miss Grace." Emily described that final night, how she'd waited until Marcus passed out from drinking to grab Lily and run, how they'd stayed in a cheap motel until the money ran out, how she'd applied for jobs but couldn't get hired without an address. "And what is your current situation?" Mr. Peters asked. "I have a job now," Emily said, her voice steadier. "I work at Marie's Diner. I'm studying for my GED at the shelter. They have a daycare program for Lily while I work." She looked at her daughter, who was contentedly playing with Daniel's badge. "I'm doing everything I can to give her a better life." Marcus's lawyer cross-examined her next, her questions sharp and designed to make Emily stumble. "Isn't it true you're currently homeless?" "I'm staying at Hope Haven Women's Shelter," Emily corrected. "They provide housing and support for women getting back on their feet." "And isn't it true you've been accepting help from Officer Hayes? Some might say inappropriate help?" Emily felt her face flush. "Officer Hayes helps all the shelter residents. He volunteers there." Mrs. Rodriguez was called next, presenting Emily's progress reports and the shelter's documentation of her parenting classes and job training. Then came Daniel's testimony about finding Emily and Lily in the park. "In my 15 years of service," Daniel said clearly, "I've never met a more dedicated mother. Miss Grace works double shifts, studies late into the night, and still makes time to read to her daughter every evening. She's doing everything right to build a stable life." Finally, Marcus took the stand. His testimony was smooth, practiced, painting himself as a concerned father and Emily as unstable. But when Judge Lawson questioned him about the violent incidents, he grew defensive and his calm facade cracked. "The child was keeping me up all night," he snapped. "What was I supposed to do?" Judge Lawson's expression hardened. She called a brief recess to review all the evidence, during which Emily paced the hallway, heart pounding. Daniel stood nearby, still holding Lily, who had fallen asleep against his shoulder. When they returned to the courtroom, Judge Lawson's face was stern but clear. "Having reviewed the evidence and testimony presented," she began, "I find Miss Grace's actions, while desperate, were those of a mother protecting her child from a volatile situation. Her current circumstances, while humble, show remarkable progress and dedication to her child's welfare." Emily held her breath. "Therefore, I am granting temporary custody of Lily Grace to her mother, Emily Grace, pending quarterly reviews of continued progress." The relief hit Emily like a wave. Her legs gave out, and she sank into her chair, tears streaming down her face. Daniel passed Lily to her, and Emily hugged her daughter close, breathing in her baby powder scent. "Thank you," she whispered, looking up at Daniel through her tears. Without thinking, she threw her arms around him, Lily squished happily between them. "Thank you for believing in me!" The shelter's common room buzzed with warmth and celebration. Paper streamers hung from the ceiling in cheerful loops, and someone had tacked up a hand-painted banner reading, "Congratulations, Emily Lilly," the familiar scent of Mrs. Rodriguez's famous hot chocolate wafted through the air, mixed with the sweetness of store-bought cookies arranged on paper plates. Emily sat in a worn armchair, Lily sleeping peacefully in her lap. Women from the shelter gathered around, their faces bright with shared joy. Some held their own children close, understanding the depth of what this victory meant. "I knew you could do it, honey," Mrs. Rodriguez said, pressing a warm mug into Emily's hands. "The judge saw what we all see, a mama who'd move mountains for her baby." "Thank you," Emily whispered, her voice still hoarse from crying happy tears in the courtroom. She looked around at these women who had become her unexpected family. Sarah, who watched Lily during Emily's diner shifts. Maria, who taught her how to stretch groceries into filling meals. Betty, who mended Lily's clothes with careful stitches. Daniel stood near the doorway, his police uniform replaced with casual jeans and a soft blue sweater. He chatted with some of the shelter staff, but his eyes kept finding their way back to Emily and Lily. When their gazes met, he gave her that special smile, the one that made her feel seen, understood. "Officer Hayes," little Tommy, one of the shelter kids, tugged at Daniel's sleeve. "Can you do the police siren sound again?" Daniel chuckled, kneeling down to the boy's level. "Maybe just once, buddy. We don't want to wake up baby Lily." He made a gentle whoop-whoop sound that had Tommy giggling and the other children gathering around. Emily watched him with the kids, her heart doing that familiar flutter she tried so hard to ignore. He was just being kind, she reminded herself. That's who he was, kind to everyone. Mrs. Rodriguez settled into the chair next to Emily's, her wise eyes taking in everything. "That man testified for you today like you were family," she said softly. Emily's cheeks warmed. "He's helped so many women here. I'm just another case." "Major." Mrs. Rodriguez shook her head with a knowing smile. "I've known Daniel Hayes for 5 years. Trust me when I say you're not just another case." Before Emily could respond, Sarah brought over more cookies, and the conversation shifted to lighter topics. The evening flowed with gentle laughter and shared stories. Some women spoke of their own custody battles, their voices strong with survival. Others simply sat quietly, holding space for this moment of victory. As the celebration wound down, Emily found herself alone by the window, watching the sunset paint the sky in soft pinks and purples. Daniel approached quietly, hands in his pockets. "Quite a day," he said, his voice low and warm. Emily nodded, emotions threatening to overwhelm her again. "I can't believe we won." "I can." Daniel's certainty made her look up at him. "You've worked so hard, Emily. The judge saw that. Anyone who looks can see how much you love Lily, how much you've grown." "I couldn't have done it without you," she admitted. "Your testimony. What you said about me being responsible, dedicated. I only told the truth." His eyes held hers, sincere and steady. Lily stirred in Emily's arms, making soft baby sounds. Daniel reached out instinctively, his finger caught in Lily's tiny grip. The moment felt delicate, precious, like a soap bubble that might burst at any second. The next morning dawned gray and cold. Emily hummed as she dressed Lily for daycare, her heart lighter than it had been in months. She had a double shift at the diner, but even that couldn't dampen her spirits. The first hint that something was wrong came when she arrived at work. Her manager, Joe, called her into his office before her shift began. His usually friendly face was creased with concern. "Emily, I got a strange call this morning," he began, shuffling papers on his desk. "Someone claiming to be concerned about your relationship with Officer Hayes." Emily's stomach dropped. "What? Said you were?" Joe looked uncomfortable. Using him to influence the custody case. That you two were involved? That's not true. Emily's voice shook. Daniel, Officer Hayes, he helps everyone at the shelter. He testified because he knows I'm a good mother, that's all. Joe held up his hands. Hey, I believe you. I've known Hayes for years. But I thought you should know. Sounds like your ex is spreading stories. Emily's hands grew cold. Of course Mark would do this. He'd always tried to twist any kindness shown to her into something ugly. But this was different. This could hurt Daniel. Throughout her shift, Emily noticed whispers, sideways glances. The diner was a popular spot with local police officers, but none came in that day. By afternoon, word had clearly spread. Sarah from the shelter called during Emily's break, her voice urgent. Emily, have you heard? Mark's been calling people all over town. He even contacted the police department, suggesting Daniel's been showing you special treatment. Emily sank onto a crate behind the diner, her legs weak. No. This couldn't be happening. Not when things were finally going right. Mrs. Rodriguez is furious, Sarah continued. She's already called the department to set things straight. But Emily, Daniel's been put on temporary suspension pending an investigation. The words hit Emily like physical blows. Daniel, suspended. Because of her. Because he'd been kind to a homeless single mother who had nothing to offer in return. Her chest felt tight with panic and guilt. Through the diner's back window, she could see customers coming and going, living their normal lives. Yesterday, she'd felt like she might finally join them in that normalcy. Now everything was falling apart again. Her phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. Don't worry about the rumors. Truth always wins. But Emily knew better. In her experience, truth was fragile, easily buried under layers of lies and speculation. She looked at his message through tears, knowing that by helping her, Daniel might lose everything he'd worked for. The rest of her shift passed in a blur of dropped plates and wrong orders. Every time the diner's bell chimed, she tensed, expecting Mark to walk in with that smug smile she knew so well. By closing time, the weight of guilt and fear sat heavy on her shoulders. Emily's ex had found a way to poison the one pure thing in her new life, Daniel's kindness. As she walked back to the shelter that evening, holding Lily close against the cold wind, she wondered if she was truly cursed to destroy everything good that came near her. Daniel stood in Chief Morgan's office, his shoulders squared but his heart pounding. The morning sun streamed through the blinds, casting harsh stripes across the chief's desk. 2 internal affairs officers sat in chairs against the wall, their faces impassive. Hand them over, Hayes. Chief Morgan's voice was gruff, but carried a note of regret. Daniel's fingers trembled slightly as he unclipped his badge and removed his service weapon. Each item made a dull thud as he placed them on the desk. 15 years of service reduced to 2 simple objects. This is ridiculous, Daniel said quietly. You know me, Chief. I've never... Save it for the investigation. The older IA officer cut him off. Multiple witnesses claim you've been showing preferential treatment to a woman in an active custody case. That you've been seen together outside of official duties. Daniel's jaw tightened. I volunteer at that shelter, everyone knows that. And that's admirable, Chief Morgan sighed, shuffling papers on his desk. But these allegations, they're serious, Hayes. We have to follow protocol. The suspension paperwork felt heavy in Daniel's hands. His mind wandered to Emily and Lily, to their faces lit up with joy just yesterday in the courtroom. Now that victory felt hollow. You're suspended with pay pending the investigation, the chief continued. No contact with the shelter or, he consulted his notes. Emily Grace during this time. Is that clear? Daniel nodded stiffly, his throat tight. As he walked through the precinct, he felt his colleagues' eyes on him. Some looked away quickly, others offered sympathetic glances. His locker cleared out, personal photos and items stuffed into a cardboard box. Daniel stepped into the parking lot. He sat in his personal car for a long moment, forehead pressed against the steering wheel. Lord, he whispered, give me strength. At the shelter, Emily was helping in the kitchen when she overheard 2 staff members talking in hushed voices. Suspended this morning. His whole career could be ruined. That ex of hers spreading lies. Such a shame about Officer Hayes. The serving spoon Emily was holding clattered to the floor. Her hands flew to her mouth, horror washing over her in waves. This was her fault. All of it. Because she'd let him help her, let him get close. Mrs. Rodriguez found Emily hiding in the supply closet 20 minutes later, hyperventilating among the cleaning supplies. "Mija," Rosa said softly, kneeling despite her bad knee. "Come out of there." Emily shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I ruined everything," she choked out. "His whole life, his career, because of me." "No, child." Mrs. Rodriguez reached for Emily's cold hands. "Because of lies and cruelty. Not because of you." But Emily couldn't hear it. Her mind raced with memories. Daniel bringing her coffee during study sessions, his gentle way with Lily, his proud smile in the courtroom. All destroyed now, because she'd been selfish enough to accept his kindness. "He has a son to support," Emily whispered, her voice breaking. "What if he loses his job? What if—" "Emily Grace." Mrs. Rodriguez's tone grew firm. "Come to my office. Now." Somehow, Emily found herself following the older woman down the hallway, past curious onlookers. Her legs felt wooden, her chest hollow. In the office, she sank into a chair while Mrs. Rodriguez closed the door. The shelter director's office was warm and cluttered, with photos of smiling women and children, success stories from over the years. Emily wondered if her picture would ever join them now, or if she'd just be remembered as the one who destroyed a good man's career. "Daniel knew what he was doing," Mrs. Rodriguez said, settling behind her desk. "He's been helping women here for years, ever since Sarah died." Emily looked up sharply. "Sarah?" "His wife." Rosa's eyes softened. "Cancer, 3 years ago. He started volunteering here afterward, said it helped him heal. Said Sarah would have wanted him to help others." Fresh tears spilled down Emily's cheeks. She hadn't known, had never asked about the wedding ring he still wore, had just accepted his kindness without questioning the cost. "But this is different," Emily protested. "He's never been accused of caring?" Mrs. Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. "Of showing Christian compassion? Of seeing a mother and child in need and reaching out his hand?" Emily wrapped her arms around herself, rocking slightly. "He lost his badge today," she whispered. "They suspended him. He lost everything because of me." Mrs. Rodriguez leaned forward, her dark eyes intense. "That man has lost far more than a badge in his life, Emily. And he's survived. The question is, will you let these lies destroy all the progress you've made? Will you let them win?" Emily stared at her hands, remembering how they'd trembled when she'd hugged Daniel in the courtroom. That moment of pure joy and gratitude had been captured in a photo by someone's phone, twisted into something ugly, used as a weapon. "I don't know what to do," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "First, you're going to stop blaming yourself," Mrs. Rodriguez said firmly. "Then, you're going to remember why you're fighting so hard. For Lily, for yourself. Daniel understood that mission when he helped you. He chose this path with open eyes." But Emily could only shake her head, tears falling faster now. All she could see was Daniel's badge being taken away, his son's face when he heard the news, his reputation in ruins. "He lost everything because of me," she repeated, the words tasting like ashes in her mouth. Mrs. Rodriguez reached across the desk, offering a tissue and a steady gaze that held both sympathy and steel. But Emily was lost in her guilt, in the crushing weight of consequences she'd never meant to cause. She buried her face in her hands, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Emily's hands trembled as she stuffed Lily's tiny clothes into her worn backpack. The shelter room felt smaller than usual, the walls pressing in around her. Lily lay in her crib, playing with a stuffed bunny Daniel had given her, innocent to the chaos swirling around them. "Just a few more things, baby," Emily whispered, her voice catching. "Then we'll—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Where would they go? The streets again? Some other town where no one knew them? Tears splashed onto a pink onesie as she folded it. This one had been a gift from Mrs. Rodriguez. Emily remembered how the shelter director had beamed, telling her it would look perfect on Lily. Now it felt like another reminder of everything she was about to leave behind. The sound of running footsteps in the hallway made her pack faster. A soft knock at the door stopped her cold. "Emily?" Daniel's voice, usually so steady, held an edge of worry. "Please, open the door." She froze, clutching Lily's clothes to her chest. I can't. Mrs. Rodriguez called me. She saw you packing." A pause. "Just let me talk to you, please." Emily glanced at Lily, who had perked up at Daniel's voice, reaching toward the door with tiny hands. "Ta-da!" she called out cheerfully. The sound broke something in Emily's heart. Wiping her eyes with her sleeve, she crossed to the door and opened it. Daniel stood there, still in his civilian clothes, his face drawn with concern. His eyes took in the scattered clothes, the half-packed bag, and Emily's tear-stained face. "You're running." It wasn't a question. Emily turned away, unable to meet his gaze. "I have to. Look what I've done to you. Your career, your reputation. That's not your fault." Daniel stepped into the room, careful to keep some distance between them. "My suspension is temporary. The investigation will clear things up." "And what about the rumors, the whispers?" Emily's voice cracked. "Everyone thinks that we." She couldn't finish the thought. "Since when do we care what people think?" Daniel's voice was gentle but firm. "The truth matters more than gossip." Emily sank onto the bed, her legs giving out. "But your job is just a job." Daniel pulled the room's single chair closer, sitting down. "What matters is doing what's right. And helping you and Lily? That's right." Lily babbled from her crib, and Daniel smiled at her, his eyes softening. The simple gesture made Emily's chest ache. This man, who had lost so much already with his wife's death, was willing to risk everything else for them. "I can't let you do this," Emily whispered. "You've already given up too much. Your badge, your—" "Stop." Daniel leaned forward, his expression intense. "I haven't given up anything. This suspension, it's temporary. But if you run now, you'll lose everything you've worked for. The custody case, your job at the diner, your GED studies." Emily stood abruptly, pacing the small room. "Maybe that's better than destroying your life. You have Jacob to think about. Your career. Your future." She hugged herself tightly. "I'm not worth all this trouble." "That's not true." Daniel's voice was sharp with conviction. "And you know it's not true. Look at Lily." Emily's eyes went to her daughter, who was watching them both with wide, trusting eyes. The baby smiled, showing her 2 tiny bottom teeth. "She deserves a chance at stability," Daniel continued softly. "At a real life, not running from town to town. And you deserve that too. But what if we fight this together instead?" Daniel stood, his height making the room feel even smaller. "What if we show them that doing the right thing matters more than appearances? That helping others isn't wrong, no matter what anyone thinks?" Emily's hands shook as she reached for Lily's backpack again. "I don't know how." "Yes, you do." Daniel gently took the bag from her hands. "You're stronger than you think. I've seen it every day since I found you in that park." The memory of that cold morning, of his kindness when she expected judgment, made fresh tears spill down Emily's cheeks. "I'm scared," she admitted. "That's okay." Daniel set the bag aside. "Being scared doesn't mean you give up. It means you keep going anyway." Lily chose that moment to throw her stuffed bunny out of the crib, giggling when it landed at Daniel's feet. He picked it up, smiling despite the seriousness of the moment. "She knows where she belongs," he said softly, returning the toy to her. "Maybe we should listen to her." Emily watched as Lily immediately hugged the bunny close, secure in her small world where love and safety still existed without question. The sight steadied something in her heart. "I won't let you lose more because of me," she whispered through her tears. But her hands slowly released their grip on the clothes she'd been holding. Daniel reached out, squeezing her hand briefly. The touch was warm, solid, grounding. His silence spoke volumes, a promise to stand beside her, to face whatever came next together. Emily looked around the room at the scattered evidence of her panic and felt the wild urge to run begin to fade. This place, these people, they had become more than just a temporary shelter. They had become hope. Mrs. Rosa Rodriguez sat at her desk, her reading glasses perched on her nose, as she dialed another number from her worn address book. The morning sun streamed through her office window, casting a warm glow on the pile of papers spread before her. Each sheet contained a different story, a different testimony of Daniel's quiet acts of kindness over the years. "Hello, Mrs. Chen?" "Yes, this is Rosa from the shelter." She smiled as the grocery store owner's familiar voice answered. "I'm calling about Officer Hayes. You remember how he helped your son last winter?" She nodded, scribbling notes. "Would you be willing to put that in writing?" Throughout the morning, women from the shelter gathered outside Mrs. Rodriguez's office, waiting to share their stories. Sarah, a young mother who'd arrived 3 months ago, clutched a handwritten letter describing how Daniel had fixed her car for free, enabling her to keep her job. Maria, who'd moved out last year and now owned a small cleaning business, spoke about how Daniel had helped her file for her business license. In the common room, Emily watched in amazement as more people arrived. The diner owner where she worked came in, carrying a thick envelope. "Got statements from all my regular customers," he announced gruffly. "That Officer Hayes, he's been buying meals for folks down on their luck for years. Never wanted recognition for it." Mrs. Rodriguez organized everything with military precision. She set up a card table where Jenny, a former legal secretary now staying at the shelter, helped people format their statements properly. The steady tap of her borrowed typewriter filled the room with purpose. "Emily," Mrs. Rodriguez called, waving her over. "Come see this." Emily approached hesitantly. Lily balanced on her hip. The baby reached for Mrs. Rodriguez's colorful scarf, and the older woman tickled her chin affectionately. "Look at these," Mrs. Rodriguez said, spreading out several photographs. They showed Daniel at various shelter events over the years, serving Thanksgiving dinner, dressed as Santa at Christmas, painting the playground equipment on a summer day. In each one, his genuine smile matched the joy on the faces around him. "He's been here every holiday for the past 5 years," Mrs. Rodriguez explained softly. "Ever since his wife passed. But it's the everyday things that really matter. The flat tires he's fixed, the job applications he's helped with, the court dates he's driven people to." Emily's throat tightened as she picked up one photo. It showed Daniel kneeling beside a young boy, patiently teaching him how to tie his shoes. The simple kindness of the moment brought tears to her eyes. A commotion at the door drew their attention. Several police officers entered, still in uniform. Emily's heart jumped in fear until she recognized them as Daniel's colleagues from the precinct. "We're here to help," announced a tall officer with graying hair. "Hayes is the best of us. We've got stories to tell about him, too." One by one, they shared memories. Daniel taking extra shifts so a colleague could be with his sick child, buying groceries for elderly residents on his beat, spending his own money to replace a stolen bicycle for a paper delivery boy. Mrs. Rodriguez's phone kept ringing. The local librarian called to tell how Daniel ran a weekly reading program for at-risk teens. The high school principal described his volunteer work with the Dropout Prevention Program. Even the grumpy hardware store owner had a story about Daniel quietly paying for supplies for struggling families. Emily sat in a corner, overwhelmed by the outpouring of support. She watched as more people arrived: teachers, nurses, small business owners, shelter residents, past and present. Each brought a piece of paper, a photograph, a story that proved what she'd sensed from the beginning. Daniel Hayes was a man who lived his faith through actions, not words. A young woman Emily hadn't met before approached her shyly. "I'm Amanda," she said, sitting nearby. "I was here 2 years ago with my son. Officer Hayes, Daniel. He saved our lives." Emily listened as Amanda described fleeing an abusive marriage with nothing but her toddler and a diaper bag. "Daniel found us sleeping in our car," she continued, "just like he found you. He brought us here, helped me get a restraining order, testified in court. Now I'm a certified nursing assistant, my son's in preschool, and we have our own apartment." More women joined them, forming a circle of shared experience. They spoke of Daniel's respectful manner, his gentle way with their children, his unwavering support through their darkest moments. But they also spoke about Emily, how they'd seen her help new residents settle in, how she stayed late after her diner shifts to watch others' children during job interviews, how she shared her small supply of baby clothes with a newly arrived mother. Mrs. Rodriguez approached with a thick folder. "Emily, would you like to see what we've gathered?" Emily nodded, unable to speak. The folder contained dozens of statements, photographs, and letters. Each page represented a life touched by Daniel's compassion, a person who refused to let him fall. But more than that, many mentioned Emily herself, her courage, her kindness, her determination to build a better life for Lily. As she read, tears spilled onto the pages. Lily patted her cheek in concern, and Emily hugged her daughter close. All her life, she'd felt alone, convinced that no one would stand beside her. Now, surrounded by this unlikely family of police officers, shelter residents, and community members, she finally understood what it meant to belong. "We take care of our own," Mrs. Rodriguez said firmly, squeezing Emily's shoulder. "You and Daniel, you're both part of this family now, and family stands together." Emily looked around the room, filled with people who'd come to help, each face representing a thread in the tapestry of support that had been woven around her and Daniel. For the first time since she'd fled her old life with nothing but Lily and her fears, Emily felt truly safe. She wasn't alone anymore. She had a community, a family, people who saw her worth and stood ready to defend it. The tears that fell now were different from the ones she'd shed on that park bench months ago. These were tears of gratitude, of belonging, of hope. Lily reached for the folder, babbling happily, and Emily smiled through her tears. "Look, baby girl," she whispered. "Look how many people love us." The courtroom's polished wooden benches felt hard and unyielding beneath Emily, as she sat with her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Lily dozed peacefully in the baby carrier beside her, tiny fingers curled around her favorite yellow blanket. The morning light filtering through the tall windows cast long shadows across the floor, and Emily could feel her heart hammering against her ribs. Her ex-partner Marcus sat across the aisle with his expensive lawyer, wearing a crisp suit that probably cost more than Emily made in 2 months at the diner. He caught her eye and smirked, making her stomach churn. She quickly looked away, focusing instead on Judge Harriet Lawson's stern face as she called the hearing to order. "Before we proceed with final arguments," Judge Lawson announced, her voice carrying clearly through the hushed courtroom, "we have several character witnesses who have requested to speak." She adjusted her reading glasses. "Mrs. Rosa Rodriguez, please approach." The shelter director walked to the witness stand with quiet dignity, her gray hair neatly pulled back, wearing her best floral dress. Emily had never seen Mrs. Rodriguez look so formal. Usually she was bustling around the shelter in comfortable slacks and a cardigan. "Mrs. Rodriguez, please share your observations of Miss Grace as a mother," the judge instructed. "I've run the women's shelter for 23 years, Mrs. Rodriguez began, her voice warm but firm. "I've seen hundreds of mothers come through our doors. Emily Grace is one of the most dedicated I've ever met." She went on to describe how Emily worked double shifts at the diner, but always made time to read to Lily, how she saved every extra penny for her daughter's needs, how she never missed a parenting class at the shelter. Marcus's lawyer stood to cross-examine her. "And isn't it true that Miss Grace was homeless when Officer Hayes found her?" "She was temporarily without housing because she chose her daughter's safety over staying with an abuser," Mrs. Rodriguez replied evenly. "That's not weakness, that's courage." The lawyer's face tightened, but he had no response to that. Next came Mrs. Chen from the grocery store, who described how Emily would walk 2 miles with Lily to buy fresh fruit, even in bad weather. "She never buys anything for herself," Mrs. Chen testified. "Everything is for her baby." The diner owner spoke about Emily's work ethic and reliability. 3 women from the shelter described Emily helping them with their children, sharing what little she had. Each testimony built a picture of a mother's quiet determination and love. Then Daniel took the stand. He looked strange without his uniform, wearing a simple blue shirt and tie, but his voice carried the same steady authority it always had. Emily watched him raise his right hand to be sworn in, remembering how those same hands had offered her a blanket that first morning in the park. "Officer Hayes," Marcus's lawyer began immediately, Isn't it true that you've shown unusual interest in my client's ex-partner? I've shown the same interest I do in all vulnerable members of our community, Daniel replied calmly. That's my job and my calling. So, you regularly invite homeless women to your house for dinner? I regularly support shelter residents in their journey to stability, Daniel corrected. My son and I host community dinners for several shelter families. Miss Grace and her daughter attended one such dinner, along with 3 other families, as Mrs. Rodriguez can verify. Emily watched Marcus's face darken as his lawyer's implications fell flat against Daniel's straightforward answers. The attorney tried another angle. And you just happened to find Miss Grace in the park that morning? I was doing my regular patrol route, Daniel explained. I found a young mother protecting her child from the cold. I did what any decent officer would do. I helped them find shelter and support. You seem to have gone above and beyond, the lawyer pressed. If showing basic human kindness is above and beyond, then yes, I suppose I did. Daniel's voice carried a hint of steel now. I've spent 15 years on the force, seeing what happens when we don't help people in crisis. I've buried too many victims of domestic violence. So yes, when I see someone trying to break that cycle and protect their child, I help. That's not special treatment. That's human decency. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Emily saw Judge Lawson nodding slightly. More witnesses followed. Daniel's police captain speaking about his exemplary record. Shelter volunteers describing Emily's progress. Even Jacob, Daniel's teenage son, telling how Lily would reach for picture books when they visited. Marcus grew increasingly agitated as each testimony dismantled his claims. When it was his turn to speak, his careful mask of respectability cracked. He ranted about Emily being unfit, about her taking his daughter away, about everyone conspiring against him. His own lawyer looked uncomfortable. Finally, Judge Lawson held up her hand. I've heard enough. She turned her stern gaze to the courtroom. This court's primary concern is the welfare of the child. Over these proceedings, I've seen overwhelming evidence of a mother who, despite difficult circumstances, has consistently put her daughter's needs first. I've seen a community come together to support that dedication. And I've seen nothing from the petitioner except attempts to control and discredit. She looked directly at Emily. Miss Grace, your love for your daughter is evident not in grand gestures, but in 100 small daily choices. You've shown remarkable courage and determination to build a stable life for her. Emily felt tears welling up as the judge continued. This court grants you full custody of Lily Grace. Mr. Warner's visitation rights will be at the discretion of Family Services, pending completion of anger management courses. The words washed over Emily like a wave of pure relief. She gathered Lily into her arms, pressing her face into her daughter's soft hair. We're free, she whispered, her voice breaking with joy. Lily patted her wet cheeks with tiny hands, babbling happily, unaware of the magnitude of the moment but responding to her mother's emotion. Behind her, Emily could hear Mrs. Rodriguez sniffling and murmuring prayers of thanks. She could sense Daniel's solid presence nearby, though she couldn't look at him yet through her tears. All around them, the gathered witnesses, this unexpected community that had become her family, were sharing in their victory. Marcus stormed out of the courtroom, his lawyer hurrying after him, but Emily barely noticed. She was too busy holding her daughter, breathing in the reality that no one could take her away now. They were finally, truly safe. Daniel Hayes adjusted his tie one last time before entering the police department's formal hearing room. Though his hands remained steady, his heart pounded against his crisp white shirt. The familiar weight of his badge was missing from his chest, a constant reminder of what hung in the balance. The room stretched before him, all dark wood and stern faces. 5 senior officers sat at the review board table, their expressions unreadable. Behind them, the department's brass seal gleamed under fluorescent lights. The room was packed with fellow officers, some he'd worked with for years, others he barely knew. Officer Daniel Hayes. Chief Morrison's voice carried across the silent room. You stand accused of improper conduct and misuse of authority in relation to your involvement with Emily Grace and her custody case. Daniel squared his shoulders. Yes, sir. These are serious allegations that could end your career. Do you understand that?" "I do, sir." Daniel's voice remained firm despite the knot in his stomach. The chief shuffled through some papers. "We've reviewed extensive testimony from the community regarding your character and conduct. Mrs. Rodriguez from the women's shelter has been particularly vocal about your years of service there." A small smile tugged at Daniel's lips as he thought of the fierce shelter director who had rallied so many people to speak up. "Would you like to make a statement before we proceed?" Chief Morrison asked. Daniel took a deep breath. "Sir, I've served this department for 15 years. In that time, I've learned that being a police officer isn't just about enforcing laws, it's about protecting people, especially those who can't protect themselves." He paused, thinking of Emily's face that first morning in the park, of little Lily bundled against the cold. "When I found Emily Grace and her baby sleeping on that bench, I didn't see a case number. I saw a mother trying her best to keep her child safe. Everything I did was within department guidelines. I brought her to a registered shelter. I testified truthfully in court about her character and progress. If helping a homeless mother find safety and stability is wrong, then I don't want to be right." Murmurs rippled through the room. Daniel noticed several of his fellow officers nodding. Chief Morrison leaned forward. "And what about the allegations of an improper relationship?" "Pure fabrication, sir," Daniel replied firmly. "Made by someone trying to manipulate the system to gain custody of a child he'd previously abandoned. Emily Grace is a woman I've helped through my volunteer work, nothing more." The review board members exchanged glances. Sergeant Peters, a veteran officer Daniel had known for years, spoke up. "We've received dozens of letters from community members about your volunteer work at the shelter. Did you know about this outpouring of support?" "No, sir. I just tried to do what was right." "That much is clear," Chief Morrison said, his stern expression softening slightly. "We've also reviewed your entire service record. Exemplary performance, multiple commendations, not a single complaint until this incident." The chief stood, and everyone in the room followed suit. "Officer Hayes, this board finds no evidence of misconduct or impropriety. The allegations against you are dismissed. You are hereby reinstated to full active duty, effective immediately." The room erupted in applause. Daniel's shoulders sagged with relief as Chief Morrison walked around the table, holding out his badge and service weapon. "Thank you, sir," Daniel managed, his voice thick with emotion, as he pinned the badge back where it belonged. His fellow officers surrounded him, offering handshakes and backslaps. Officer Sarah Martinez, his regular patrol partner, gave him a quick hug. "Never doubted you for a minute, Hayes." "Thanks, Martinez." Daniel smiled, but his thoughts were already racing ahead to the shelter, to Emily and Lily. As the crowd began to disperse, Chief Morrison pulled him aside. "Hayes, off the record, you did good. Sometimes doing the right thing means walking a fine line." "Yes, sir. Thank you." "Now, get out of here," the chief said with a knowing look. "I'm sure there are some people waiting to hear this news." Daniel didn't need to be told twice. He practically jogged to his car, his badge a comforting weight against his chest once again. The drive to the shelter seemed longer than usual, though he knew it was just his impatience. As he pulled into the parking lot, he saw movement at the shelter's front door. Emily stood there, Lily perched on her hip, both of them watching expectantly. His heart leaped at the sight of them. Emily's face broke into a radiant smile as she recognized him in his full uniform. Lily squealed and reached out her little arms, bouncing excitedly in her mother's grip. They both moved toward him as he got out of the car, and for the first time in weeks, Daniel felt truly whole again. It wasn't just about the badge or being cleared of the accusations. Looking at Emily's joyful face and Lily's innocent excitement, Daniel knew he'd found something even more precious than his career. He'd found a purpose beyond the uniform and two people who made every sacrifice worthwhile. Mrs. Rodriguez sat behind her worn oak desk, hands folded neatly atop a manila folder. Afternoon sunlight streamed through the shelter's window, catching the silver in her hair. Emily perched nervously on the edge of her chair, Lily contentedly playing with a soft toy in her lap. "Emily," Mrs. Rodriguez began, her warm brown eyes crinkling at the corners. "How long have you been with us now?" 3 months, Emily replied softly, bouncing Lily gently. I can't thank you enough for everything. Mrs. Rodriguez waved away her thanks. You've done the hard work yourself, dear. That's actually why I asked you to come in today. She opened the folder, pulling out some paperwork. We have an opening for an assistant here at the shelter. It includes a small apartment in the staff wing. Emily's breath caught in her throat. Her fingers trembled as she stroked Lily's fine hair. Me? She whispered. But I don't have any. You have exactly what we need, Mrs. Rodriguez interrupted gently. You understand our women because you've walked in their shoes. I've watched you help new arrivals, sharing your experience and hope. The way you organized the donation closet last week showed initiative. And, she added with a knowing smile, I've noticed how you comfort the children when their mothers are in crisis. Tears welled in Emily's eyes. I remember how scared I was that first night. How much it meant when someone showed kindness. That's precisely why you're perfect for this position. Mrs. Rodriguez slid the papers across her desk. The pay isn't much, but the apartment would be included. You'd have your own kitchen, bathroom, even a small yard space. What do you think? Emily looked down at Lily, who gazed back with bright, trusting eyes. A home. A real home, with walls that belonged to them. A place where Lily could grow up safe and loved. Yes, Emily managed through happy tears. Yes, please. Mrs. Rodriguez beamed, standing to hug them both. Welcome to the team, Emily. Let's get you moved in today. The next few hours passed in a blur of joy and activity. Women from the shelter helped Emily pack her few belongings, chattering excitedly. Even the children pitched in, making a game of carrying smaller items to the cozy ground-floor apartment. Emily couldn't stop smiling as she explored their new space. The living room was small but bright, with windows overlooking a pocket garden. The kitchen had worn but clean counters, and a refrigerator that hummed cheerfully. A snug bedroom held space for both Lily's crib and a twin bed for Emily. It wasn't fancy, but it was theirs. Daniel appeared in the afternoon, still in his police uniform, carrying a housewarming gift, a box of basic supplies and a potted plant for the windowsill. It's called a peace lily, he explained, setting it carefully on the sill. Seemed fitting. Emily touched the white flower gently. It's perfect. Thank you, Daniel, for everything. He smiled. That warm, steady smile that had become such a comfort. You did all the hard work. I just helped point the way. As evening approached, the well-wishers gradually departed. Mrs. Rodriguez left a casserole in the refrigerator, and Daniel promised to stop by tomorrow with some extra kitchen supplies from his house. Finally, it was just Emily and Lily in their new home. She'd bathed Lily in their very own tub, dressed her in soft pajamas, and now held her close in the quiet living room. The baby's weight felt perfect in her arms, warm and trusting. Emily found a candle in one of the gift boxes and placed it on the coffee table. With Lily securely in one arm, she struck a match and lit the wick. The small flame danced, casting gentle shadows on the walls of their home. Their home. Tears of gratitude slipped down her cheeks as Emily sank to her knees beside the table. She couldn't remember the last time she'd prayed, but the words came naturally now. "Thank you," she whispered, holding Lily close. "Thank you for second chances." The candle flickered, and Lily made a soft, contented sound against her shoulder. Outside their window, stars began to appear in the darkening sky. For the first time in so long, Emily felt completely at peace. They were home. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows through the small apartment's windows, warming the modest living space Emily now called home. Though sparsely furnished, she had managed to make it cozy with a second-hand couch, a few throw pillows, and cheerful yellow curtains from the shelter's donation bin. A worn area rug covered the bare floor where Lily practiced her crawling, determined to explore every corner of their new sanctuary. A gentle knock echoed through the room. Emily's heart skipped as she opened the door to find Daniel standing there, still in his police uniform, holding a small potted plant. "I thought you might like something to brighten up the place," he said, offering the plant with a shy smile. "It's a peace lily." Emily's fingers brushed against his as she accepted the gift. "It's perfect," she whispered, placing it on the windowsill where sunlight could reach its delicate white blooms. Lily, hearing Daniel's familiar voice, squealed with delight and began crawling toward him at top speed. Da, 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 da. Her tiny hands reached up, demanding to be held. Emily watched as Daniel scooped up her daughter, his badge glinting in the evening light. The sight of them together made her throat tight with emotion. Lily immediately snuggled into his chest, playing with his collar while giggling. "She really loves you," Emily said softly, watching them together. Daniel sat on the couch, still cradling Lily. "The feeling's mutual, little one." He tickled Lily's tummy, earning another peal of laughter. "Both of you have become." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "You've become very important to me." Emily settled beside them on the couch, her hands fidgeting in her lap. "Daniel, I don't know how to thank you for everything. The job, this apartment, standing by us through the custody battle." "Emily," he interrupted gently, "I didn't do those things out of duty or obligation." His eyes met hers, earnest and vulnerable. "I did them because I care about you, both of you." The room grew quiet except for Lily's contented babbling. Emily's heart thundered in her chest as Daniel continued. "When Sarah died," he said, referring to his late wife, "I thought that part of my life was over. I threw myself into work, into volunteering at the shelter. I told myself it was enough." He adjusted Lily in his arms as she started to doze. "But then, I found you that morning in the park, and something changed." Emily's eyes welled with tears. "I was so scared that day," she admitted. "Of you, of everyone. I didn't trust anyone anymore." "I know." Daniel's free hand found hers on the couch between them. "But you're one of the strongest people I've ever met, Emily. Watching you fight for Lily, work so hard to build a new life. It's inspired me. Reminded me what real courage looks like." Lily had fallen asleep against Daniel's chest, her small fingers still clutching his uniform. Emily watched her daughter's peaceful face, marveling at how safe she felt with him. "When Lily calls you, da, Emily began hesitantly. "I used to worry it would make you uncomfortable, but the way you are with her." "She's precious to me," Daniel said simply. "Just like her mother." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Emily's breath caught as Daniel's thumb traced gentle circles on her palm. "I know it might be too soon," he continued. "You've been through so much, and the last thing I want is to rush you or make you feel pressured, but I need you to know how I feel." He took a deep breath. "I'm falling in love with you, Emily Grace, with both of you." Tears spilled down Emily's cheeks as years of fear and doubt began to melt away. She looked at Daniel, really looked at him, and saw not just the police officer who had rescued her, but the man who had become her foundation, her safe harbor in the storm. "I used to think love was supposed to hurt," she whispered. "That I deserved the pain. But you've shown me what real love looks like, patient, kind, supportive." She squeezed his hand. "You make me feel safe, Daniel. You make me feel worthy." Lily stirred between them, snuggling deeper into Daniel's embrace. The sight brought fresh tears to Emily's eyes, but this time they were tears of joy, of possibility. Emily shifted closer on the couch, her shoulder touching his. The contact sent warmth spreading through her chest. "I'm not afraid anymore," she whispered, lacing her fingers through his. In the quiet of their new home, with Lily sleeping peacefully between them, Emily felt the last of her walls crumble away. They sat together in comfortable silence, a family taking shape in the gentle glow of sunset. The community center buzzed with warmth and chatter as dozens of families gathered for the annual Thanksgiving dinner. Festive decorations adorned every corner, paper turkeys made by shelter children, orange and red streamers, and twinkling lights strung across the ceiling. The aroma of roasted turkey, fresh bread, and pumpkin pie filled the air. Emily sat at a round table covered in a cream-colored cloth, her heart full as she watched Lily bounce happily in Daniel's lap. The baby wore a tiny orange dress with fall leaves embroidered on the collar, a gift from Mrs. Rodriguez. Jacob sat beside them, sneaking silly faces at Lily when he thought no one was looking. "More stuffing?" Mrs. Rodriguez appeared at Emily's elbow, bearing a steaming dish. Her eyes twinkled with grandmotherly affection. "Everything's delicious," Emily said, touched by how the shelter director had orchestrated this gathering. The long table stretched across the room, filled with shelter residents past and present, volunteers and community members who had stood by them during the custody battle. "Da-da," Lily squealed, reaching for Daniel's fork. He deftly moved it away while keeping her steady on his knee. "Still saying that, huh?" Jacob teased, but his smile was genuine. The teenager had slowly warmed to Emily and Lily over the past months, his initial wariness melting into protective affection. "Here, let me take her so you can eat," Emily offered, but Daniel shook his head. "I've got her. You enjoy your dinner, you've earned it." His eyes met hers with that steady warmth that never failed to make her heart flutter. From nearby tables, familiar faces beamed at them. There was Rita, the diner owner, who had given Emily her first job. Tom and Sarah from Daniel's precinct sat with their families, their badges catching the light. Even Emily's lawyer, who had worked pro bono, had stopped by with a casserole and congratulations. "Remember when you first came to us?" Mrs. Rodriguez settled into an empty chair, her voice soft with memory. "Look how far you've come, Mihija." Emily glanced around the table, emotion tightening her throat. 6 months ago, she'd been sleeping on a park bench, certain she had no future. Now she had a job, a home, and people who believed in her. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." "Don't thank me," Mrs. Rodriguez patted her hand. "You did the hard work. You showed everyone what strength looks like." Lily chose that moment to grab a handful of mashed potatoes, smearing them across Daniel's uniform shirt. Instead of getting upset, he laughed, the sound rich and free. "Good thing I'm off duty," he said, reaching for a napkin. Emily jumped up to help clean the mess, their hands brushing as they both dabbed at the stain. "Sorry about your shirt," Emily murmured. "It's seen worse," Daniel smiled, though usually from less cute culprits. Jacob rolled his eyes, good-naturedly. "You two are impossible." The conversation flowed easily as they shared their meal. Emily couldn't help but marvel at how natural it felt, this makeshift family they'd created. Jacob told stories from school, Daniel shared funny moments from work, and Lily entertained everyone with her attempts to speak. As the evening progressed, other dinner guests stopped by their table. Women from the shelter hugged Emily, celebrating her recent promotion to full-time staff. Fellow officers clapped Daniel on the back, their respect evident in every gesture. "Emily," called a voice, and she turned to see Rita approaching with a massive slice of pumpkin pie. "Save room for dessert, honey, made it special." "You didn't have to." "Nonsense. You're family now." Rita set down the pie and squeezed Emily's shoulder before hurrying back to serve others. Family. The word echoed in Emily's heart as she watched Daniel cutting the pie into small bites for Lily. He handled her daughter with such tenderness, as if she were the most precious thing in the world. The community center glowed with golden light as evening settled in. Children ran between tables, playing with paper airplanes made from their placemats. Laughter and conversation created a warm symphony of belonging. Mrs. Rodriguez stood to give a short speech, thanking everyone for coming and celebrating another year of community support. As she spoke about hope and second chances, Emily felt tears prick her eyes. Daniel's hand found hers under the table, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her palm. Jacob pretended not to notice, but his smile was knowing. "And now," Mrs. Rodriguez concluded, "let's give thanks for all our blessings." As heads bowed around the room, Emily looked at her daughter, healthy and happy in Daniel's arms. She looked at Jacob, no longer a wary stranger, but a protective older brother to Lily. She looked at the community that had embraced them, the friends who had become family. The simple truth hit her then, overwhelming in its clarity. Through all the struggles and fears, through the court battles and uncertain days, love had been quietly building this miracle around them. Lily clapped her little hands, delighted by the twinkling lights above. Emily leaned close to Daniel, her voice soft but sure as she whispered, "We finally have a home. What would you do if you were in their place?" Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you enjoyed the story of Emily Grace, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.